week 4 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few running backs I looked at off the wire. So this week, not a lot of big names on the wire, but definitely a few plays that can help your bench depth and obviously maybe turn out to be starters as the season goes on. First guy's Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. Achane in the preseason, I was saying this guy could be something big here for this Dolphin team, but obviously he would have to jump Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson over the depth chart. But now Ahmed's out, he definitely lost his chance as the backup running back. And right now, after a performance where he came off 18 carries, 203 rush yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 catches, 30 yards, and 2 touchdowns here. Monster performance, over 50 fantasy points here is Achane. He's definitely a guy that's a must-add on the waiver wire this week, and he just adds another dynamic to this crazy Miami Dolphin offense to start with. A type of running back here that could move in between the tackles. His juke moves and his ability to make defenders miss definitely was shown in this ball game. I know this Denver Bronco defense isn't that good, but still, for a guy to put up 230 yards from scrimmage and have 4 total touchdowns, that's nothing to sneeze at, obviously, to have over 50 fantasy points. So right now, Achane did get dropped in a decent amount of fantasy leagues over the last few weeks where he really didn't have a role over here in Miami. But after a monster ball game like that, we're going to see him on the field a whole lot, I believe. Him and Mostert even splitting possibly like they did in this ball game. So right now, while he's available in 59% of fantasy leagues here, Ronies definitely should go out there and get him this week. The next running back's Jared McKinnon of the Kansas City Chiefs. So McKinnon last season, he had 9 touchdowns receiving, and so far he got off to the slow start, but right here in a good ball game in week 3, he had a nice ball game with McKinnon, and maybe now he'll be part of this offense a little more this season. And he's got a pretty tough matchup at a New York Jet defense that obviously is good here on Sunday Night Football. But Jared McKinnon, like I said, coming off a big ball game, 17.8 point fantasy points in PPR leagues after the first 2 weeks not doing much. And I know he only had 3 catches and 2 of them were a touchdown, which obviously is fluky. But like I mentioned, this week at the running back position on the wire, there's not much going on besides Achane here, who's definitely a guy that's got the most upside and can make plays. But right now, while McKinnon's out there in 54% of fantasy leagues and still a part of the red zone offense in this passing game, he's a running back to add this week. The next back is Ezekiel Elliott of the New England Patriots. So Ezekiel Elliott, he looked pretty good in that ball game at a tough New York Jet front line where he ran pretty tough in that one, and he got a big workload in the wet rain over there. 16 carries, 80 yards, a catch for 7 yards. Obviously, the backfield's over there from Andre Stevenson so far. Though in the first 2 out of 3 ball games, Zeke's had at least 7 or more fantasy points in PPR leagues. So right now, it's obviously a revenge game here for Zeke at the Dallas Cowboys, his former team where he spent his whole career before coming to New England Patriots this offseason if they cut him loose. And, Zeke's going to want to run the football well. He's going to want to run over some of the defenders on this Cowboy team. And for the Patriots here, they want to have a grinded-out type of game versus a tough Cowboy defense, even though this Arizona Cardinal team shredded them on the ground. So right now, versus former team, coming off a solid ball game and a good workload, I think Zeke's a decent add for owners this week, and he's available in 57% of fantasy leagues. Next running back's Rico Dowdle of the Dallas Cowboys. So Rico Dowdle, he's been getting some decent work the first 3 weeks of the season here for this Cowboy team. Available in 97% of leagues, and obviously he's the backup to Tony Pollard. We didn't see Deuce Vaughn at all pretty much in week 3. So the first couple games of the season here, I'm not going to go by points really, but Dowdle's definitely getting the backup touches. Week 1 at the Giants, 6 carries, 24 yards. Week 2 versus the Jets, 7 carries, 26 yards, a catch, 17 yards. And then week 3 at Arizona, in that one, he had 7 total touches, 4 carries, 21 yards, and then 3 catches, 25 yards, and a touchdown. So right now, obviously, Tony Pollard's the man over there in Dallas and one of the better running backs in fantasy football so far to start the season. But right here, Dowdle's at least getting, it seems like, anywhere from 6 to 10 touch range, and a guy who's a physical running back, and they even use them in goal line packages a little bit in the last game. So right now, while he's available in 97% of fantasy leagues and something happens to Pollard, obviously next man up here is Rico Dowdle. So as more as a handcuff and a guy just to keep an eye on, I would have an ad for him this week. Next back's Melvin Gordon of the Baltimore Ravens. So another injury in the backfield here for Baltimore. We saw Gus Edwards leave that one with a concussion in week 3, and Melvin Gordon came in and played pretty decent. We know Melvin Gordon's a good veteran and still a guy that could do a little bit of everything. Catch the ball out of the backfield, run him between the tackles, and make some plays. He had 10 carries, 32 yards, and 2 catches for 23 yards for this Raven team versus the Colts. So right now, by some chance, if he does start out, it's a pretty tough matchup with the Cleveland Browns that just shut down Derrick Henry in that ball game. But like I said, Melvin Gordon's a veteran. He's a guy that could do it all, pass protect as well, catch, running between the tackles. And we'll see right now if Gus Edwards will get out of that protocol, or they'll go back, obviously, to Justice Hill. But right now, while Gordon's available in 99% of fantasy leagues, got it in this week. And if he's not going to be in the offense, you just drop him if you claimed him and he's not going to play this week. And the final running back I looked at off the wire is Matt Breida of the New York Giants. So there's a chance Saquon Barkley definitely could come back in the Giants' next ball game. He was pushing to try to play in that Thursday night game in Week 3 versus Niners. But Matt Breida in that one, he came off. Not much going on that one, but he still had 10.8 fantasy points versus the Niners. 4 carries, 17 yards, a touchdown, and 3 catches for a yard. And now Week 4 matchup versus the Seahawks, I give up the 8th most fantasy points to running backs on the season. Breida available in 70% of fantasy leagues. Obviously, he's last on the priority list. Like I said, Saquon Barkley possibly could come back on Monday Night Football in Week 4. But right now, if you're looking for a running back and a guy an opportunity to start this week if Barkley don't come back, Breida is a running back to add in 70% of leagues. That's a few running backs I look to add off the wire for Week 4 of the fantasy football season.